Welcome to A Court of Transformation and Awakening. I am Lorrie Gray.
And I'm Amanda Grace Harrison.
And in this episode, we are going to be discussing chapters 20 and 21 of A Court of Thorns and Roses. Yay!
Yay! We're here.
We're here. All right. So in the last chapter, we got this. We saw that there were bonfires being built because Fire Night is coming up. And so now we are there. It's the day of Fire Night.
And we've had our very, very limited communication from Tamlin. So they were not understanding still why to stay away. Bless her heart. Yeah. I would have been the same.
And so she doesn't see Tamlin. She doesn't see either of them all day. The servants are gone. The kitchen's empty.
And then the drum beats
start to hear the drums.
And they are deep and probing, summoning. Oh, jeez. Stay in your room. Stay in your room.
All right. And then we see Tamlin heading out. And, we're starting to get this picture that there's something happening here where he's shirtless with just the baldric across his chest. The warrior incarnate.
Where? That's at the bottom? Oh, yeah, the bottom of that page.
Yeah. And so, he lets her know he has to go. And she's like, okay, but to do what? And she's connecting with this. And
she's feeling very strongly pulled to this. She keeps having to remind herself that she's not invited. She's like, but there's a string tied to my gut, pulling me towards those hills, commanding me to go, to hear the fairy drums. Bless her. She doesn't understand why not to go. He just keeps saying not to. Because I said so.
Right.
Call back.
Yeah, because I said so.
Just trust me on this one. Don't go.
Right. So he's like, just stay in your chamber. And then off he goes. And she has this moment. Okay, stay in your chamber, in your room. And and I was thinking about this. So there's all of this stuff going on. This just made me think about being left out.
Yeah.
Right, like, because here's this event, here's these people, and they're off.
So fun, and
they're off doing
beautiful sunset happening, and then the fires and the smoke silhouetted against that,
and she's not invited.
And she's not told why she's not invited.
She's not told why she's not invited. Oh, it's such a thing. It made me think about whenever we first moved to LA. Right. Like we had been living in a different city, and, we've moved a number of times. And so we found ourselves in new cities and new locations and needing to create new friend groups. Now we're considering doing that whole thing again. But that's a thing. That's a thing. That's a deeper topic. But I was remembering when we first came to LA, and, so we got plugged into Mosaic. That's where we met, right? And there were, and it was so interesting because I was invited to a lot of things. It's like, oh, we're doing this, do you want to serve in this part of the church? We're having in this book club. Oh, there's this mom's group. Here's this thing. And so I felt like I was getting plugged in. Like, in no way was I like rejected or excluded. Everybody was very welcoming. Started making friends, and there were so many cool people, and I'm like, okay, I love this. I'm making friends. It was a little weird for me at the time because I'm in a wheelchair, and there's I don't know.
Yeah, it's awkward.
There's stuff that happens, but yes. Anyway, but I remember meeting people and just enjoying them so much, and like liking them so much. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love these people. I want to be friends, and hanging out with them at these events. And in my mind, like we're good friends. And then I would see pictures of them on Facebook, and it's like, so-and-so's birthday dinner
without me.
They all got together without me. And I'm like, right, these are people who they were in a relationship for decades, like before I was here. Some of these people have been friends since high school. They went to school together. They have long-standing friendship, or like, they've been doing this, the three of them, the four of them getting together for birthday dinners or monthly dinners long before I came to town. Logically, I got that.
Yeah.
But in the moment, I'm like, oh, I feel left out.
If only I was a little cooler, they would open up their group and want me at all of their events.
At all of their events, and be invited to every single thing.
Yeah.
Right? But when I was working through that, I remember seeing something, and it was kind of just this like representation of relationships. How, and I think it was shaped kind of like a bullseye, where it's like you're gonna have your like a very small group of like close friends, and then you're gonna have like your core
Inner
community,
circle.
like your inner circle, and then you're gonna have like acquaintances, and then and there were sort of like several layers of expanding friendships. And it was helpful at the time because I remember having this moment of actually realizing, oh my goodness, one, we have these list of people who we actually are really good friends with, and we manage to see them maybe once every 6 months because it's LA.
Yeah.
LA is like that. And I'm like, I have a list of people who I wish I was talking to every week, who I'm not. Like, I'm almost like barely keeping up with the close friendships that I have and staying connected with people. And I had the oddest thought of like, can you imagine if every person that we met and enjoyed wanted to be our best friend?
That would be exhausting.
It would be so overwhelming and exhausting. And it was a really helpful shift. I'm like, oh, right. It's helpful and good that not every person that I meet wants to be my best friend, because I don't have the time or the capacity actually to be best friends with all of these people. And it was helpful because in my mind, again, I'm very Feyre-ish of, if they didn't invite me to their birthday, what does that mean that's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Right. But coming out of it to a more logical perspective of actually recognizing it is such a good thing that not everybody that I meet wants to be my best friend, or I would be so overwhelmed trying to keep up with all of these relationships, and was able to actually see it as a good thing, I guess.
That's good. That's very good. You're not a stupid, insignificant human.
Stupid, insignificant human. Half wild beast kind of mode.
Beast.
Right? Yeah, anyway, but I'm like, gosh, but it's not fun to have moments where you feel left out.
No.
And
Not fun at all.
and what I'll say about that is I think that when we feel left out and we're not able to quite get to that place where it's super rational, it doesn't necessarily lead to rational decisions. It might lead to emotional ones, like what happens here with Feyre, where she's like, and I think that's the thing. I think that she was just, one, nobody had given her enough information for why she needed to stay there. And she's feeling left out, and she's super annoyed and frustrated. She's like, well, forget it. You can't tell me what to do.
And she's got the drums and this wild, wicked voice in her, weaving in between the drum beats, whispering, go.
Yeah, so she's like,
Tugging at her, go see, go see.
she's like, I'm gonna go. Yeah. And then she goes out to the.
This is really,
Great
honestly, when I think about this from a human perspective and as a metaphor, by 10 o'clock, I could no longer stand it. No, it's not quite 11:30, but this is practically a booty call at this point. Like, if you're leaving the house at 10 o'clock, can any good really come of this situation? I'm not sure, Farah.
Oh my word! It's like, how long can you hold out? 10 o'clock. No longer stand it.
I can't stand it. I gotta
Follow
go
the
party.
drums.
There's a party.
All right, and so we have this scene where she's observing stuff. She's like, okay, there's definitely stuff going on here. I don't quite get it, but something's about to happen. And she's starting to look at this, and then, oh dang,
Oh, jeez.
we find 3 strangers,
Bad, bad, bad.
creepy ones, and
Human woman. We've not seen one of you for a while.
creepy. Oh gosh. And this is just one of those scenes where I'm like, oh, like everything about this feels awful. And you can see, she's like this idea of like yanking on her arms and the grip tightening till it hurts and like not being able to get
Digging
away.
into her ribs. No.
Leave me alone. Oh gosh, just such a moment. I do have to say, like, I think, this is one of those things where like I'm glad that there are, for at least for some like the fan fiction that we've been reading, where I loved that on the fan fiction stuff that we read, there were like trigger warnings for things.
Yeah.
Like I kind of feel like there should be, I kind of wish for novels like this, there almost were like trigger warnings at the top of this, because like
each chapter, yeah.
so like almost to prepare for it, because like if, gosh, like statistically, this almost makes my stomach like sick to think of, but I'm like, when we think about people listening to this podcast, like statistically the amount of people who have actually probably experienced some version of this in real life is a lot.
It's almost like for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've experienced
Yeah.
things like this. And it's,
It's like worst fear type of stuff. Like no one looked, no one noticed.
yeah. And it's like,
Horrifying.
yeah, this person is, it's like, and they're stronger than me and I can't get away. And like, you can kind of see what's going on. Oh my gosh. Just like talking about it, like, oh, we need to shake, shake,
is a book.
shake. It's
It's not happening to me right now.
oh my gosh. It's really, yeah. I, reading about this and like reading about things like this in books, like it does often like, connect me to, some of, the things that I've experienced. And I tell you what, non-consensual sexual trauma is just shitty. You know what? That was helpful, by the way. As a side note, that's a little bit deeper than I was going to go on this episode, but that language, I remember like whenever I was younger. Now again, I was in an environment where there wasn't anybody safe in my life that I could talk to about the things that I experienced.
Yes.
Right? So it's like there's nobody to talk to, there's nobody to process this with. There's so much shame. But the only language I had to work with at the time was rape.
Yeah.
Right? And I had a very clear like, okay, this is rape and this is not. And then I'm like, okay, well, it wasn't that. Like, it wasn't quite that, like, not like in terms of what I've seen depicted on the shows, but I didn't have any other language. So I'm like, well, okay, if it wasn't that, then was it not that? And I remember, and I look back at like how much struggle I had because just nobody had explained the things to me. Nobody was talking about this in a public way, and I didn't have language. And I remember the day that I heard the term like non-consensual sexual experiences. I'm like, yes.
Fine.
Yes.
Yeah. Just having the words for something helps so much.
Right? Because in the past, I'm like, okay, well, I had this thing, but it wasn't really this, but it wasn't really this, and there's so much like shame around it. It's hard to talk about. And then you just have that language of like, okay, this is what I experienced.
Yeah.
It was a non-consensual experience. And it was really helpful for me to have those moments. But gosh, guys, there's no words to make any of that better. But I mean, I think I would just say to anybody out there who's was triggered by this that you are not alone. And I'm sending so much love as a person who has experienced things in that category. But yes, but I'll let you say, heart rate, heart pounding, just trying to read through this chapter.
It's nauseating.
It is.
For sure.
But
then
thank God.
falls out of their grasp and the ground wells up beneath her. The ground welled up beneath me and I reached for my butter knife. That's how I read that. She reaches for her knives, but sturdy hands grasped her. Thank goodness. A savior comes along who might just be creepier than they are. She's not.
Yeah. But so all we know right now, so the ending for chapter 20 is that she is rescued. That we have
Those three creeps anyways.
from those three creeps. So they were trying to drag her into the woods, and here we have this other person, and slips an arm around her shoulders. We've been looking for you. Now here, this is an interesting thing though. So she's super concerned about these three fairies pulling her into the woods and how creepy they are. But when they see the person who rescued her, they're
terrified.
They pale.
Yeah.
And they're terrified and they run away. So that's not necessarily comforting. And so, she steps out of the shelter of her savior's arms, turns to thank him. Standing before me was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. Okay, so that ends chapter 20, which we had to just jump right into chapter 21 with this. Everything about the stranger radiated sensual grace and ease. And we go to this place of like describing him. I love that his blue eyes, they were so deep, they were violet. I only realized recently that eyes could be violet.
No, I thought that was just for the book too.
I did too.
Like, oh, he's got purple eyes.
No, I looked it up and I was like, I did not realize that you could actually have violet eyes in real life. And
I've definitely never seen that. If any of you have violet eyes, can you please send us
a photo?
Love to see that.
What that looks like. But it's so cool.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to that page, but on the next page she says, he smiled for a heartbeat longer. I had never seen anyone so handsome and never had so many warning bells pealed in my head because of it. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like the predator who's so attractive should draw you in.
Yeah, so we have a lot of description here of
But
him.
his voice, and I love this, the difference between this and the purr that she was getting from Tamlin in the last one. His voice was a lover's purr that sent shivers through me, caressing every muscle and bone and nerve. Like, this is an intense night for Feyre. I'm just going through this with her right now. Jeez, this is a lot.
Yep. And so she, he starts questioning her, who she is, why she's here.
Fire Night.
She's lying through her teeth, and he knows it.
And then he's like ready to leave her alone. And then I should have walked away, should have shut my mouth. Why are you here then? She's just digging herself a deep. She could get free. She could go home, and then she's the one who keeps invigorating the conversation.
Yeah, and then I love here that she gets poor Feyre here. She's like bold enough to ask a question, and then she gets another like more riddles and questions to be answered.
I'd had enough.
Where she's like, "Oh my gosh, can somebody give me a straight answer?" No, apparently not. Okay, but I'd had enough, especially as his smile turned cold and cruel. Enjoy the ride. I repeated as plainly as I could, and she heads back.
She played it very cool.
I think she did.
I gotta say, very impressed me in that whole thing. But her lies are so good, where she's just like, "Oh, I'm here with two of my fairy friends."
Yeah, and she's like,
a human girl with two fairy friends. How's it? Oh, I've known them my whole life, so I have no reason to be scared of them. And he's like,
and they're getting refreshments. And he's like,
getting refreshments. He's like, okay, you're
she
just
tried. So it wasn't believable, but I mean, I think he's kind of like, okay, props for trying.
Yeah,
at least she was doing her best. Okay, so then Feyre's caught. Lucien finds her.
Sees her.
And
you stupid mortal, he snapped. Didn't anyone tell you to stay in your room?
Idiot, useless human fool. Lucien, we're trying to work on our negative self-talk here. You are not helping. You are not helping. So he's cursing. Oh my gosh. And then throws her over his shoulder and runs. Running fast. Oh my goodness. Shut her eyes. Oh, Lucien. Okay, so again, so he's freaking out.
It's the great right, Cauldron Boil Me. Didn't anyone tell you what it is? No, Lucien, you didn't tell
Nobody
her.
told me what it is.
Damn it.
But I love this right before this, where like right before he says that line, where she's like, so what? I shed, because, and she's like, I hated feeling like a disobedient child.
Yes.
Right.
And that there's another moment later in this chapter where I have the word obedience. Oh, that word.
Oh my gosh, that word. Right. But like this whole thing, but I mean, I think that's the thing. Like there's a, whether they intended to or not, they've created a differentiation between like the power dynamics here, because they have the information and she doesn't. So she like is at their mercy, and they're creating this scenario where she's not being talked to and treated like an equal. And then and then when somebody corrects you like without the information, that like disobedient child sort of thing. And it's like, gosh, I'm like, I was frustrated with her for this, where I'm like, I mean, do I have a little bit of like personal sensitivity to that due to my own past trauma and possibly some areas where I can still grow a little bit?
No, of course not.
Yes, I do.
Nothing to do with anything.
Yes, I do. But but things like this where like I feel like whenever I feel like there's somebody's like being patronizing, like I get a little Feyre-ish in those moments too. Like I really can't stand it. So I'm like,
it's really, really annoying.
Yeah, like pitch a fit. But then she gets to hear what's actually going to happen in the right. And before Tamlin said, it's very fairy. Yeah, we'll go with it's very fairy. Great and terrible magic entering him. He explains all of this. This is quite interesting and intense.
Yes. Tonight is not for lovemaking. I swallowed my nausea.
Oh my goodness. And like, learning like why the female fairies are there. It's an honor to be chosen. Like, this is one of those things where I'm like, like, wait, I don't even want to go metaphorical with all of this. I'm like, I just don't like this. And it's, and I was like, okay, it's just a different culture. Be respectful. I'm like, I still don't like it.
Yeah. It's like,
but now
it's no good. I love that Feyre goes, it's so real and so human. I love this because it's like she's sick and she's nauseated. It's made me sick. The thought of Tamlin forcing me that magic could strip away any sense of self, of right or wrong. But hearing that some feral part of him wanted me, like she's still like, oh, it's disgusting, it's horrible. But the fact that some part of him wants me, it makes her breath painful. Stay in your room tonight, Feyre, he says one more time, walking to the garden doors. No matter who comes knocking, keep the door locked. Don't come out until morning. Damn it.
And now that somebody finally explained to her what was happening, which again, guys, somebody could have done this earlier. So now she gets it. And she's like, okay.
But because she's been through so much now with this horrible situation that she just went through and just got saved from and all of this, she once again forgets to eat. So she can't just stay in her room and she has to come out for a midnight snack later after 2 a.m. But she still calls it a midnight snack. And then... So I think another lesson we can learn from this is to keep a snack in your bedroom.
Always keep a snack in your bedroom.
Always keep a snack in your bedroom.
And I love this too, that like her brain's going down this path of like, well, that girl was probably beautiful. She was probably charming. Oh, yeah. Like she's in comparison. Like she's probably prettier than me. And I need to, which may or may not have tied into her need for a snack at that point.
That's so true.
Oh my goodness. So she's going to, so she's going to go down the hallway and then, uh-oh.
I smelled you. I love that.
Uh-oh.
I smelled you, he breathed, as the cookie dropped from my hand.
Oh my gosh.
Sounds good. So good.
It's like, Feyre, go get your cookie. Okay, so this whole scene in the hallway is kind of intense.
Yeah, it's good. There's the good neck bite. It's some fun stuff. Fun stuff to read. I won't read it aloud.
We won't read all of this out loud. You guys can go through and read that. It's super fun. But yeah, so I mean, what we definitely see here is there's a lot of sexual intensity here, which again, for our story, continuing to see their relationship change from this like person that she was terrified of to we're just seeing this build for them. Yeah. And then in the midst of like, okay, we've got major attraction, then we have
so good. It's so good and so horrible.
Such a jerk moment. Don't ever disobey me again. And I'm like,
oh my gosh. Can you imagine a worse, unsexier line on the planet than don't ever disobey me again? Oh. And he says it with a deep purr. Like it doesn't get
so weird
than that.
Which I mean, that was
awakening everything and lulling it into complicity. Oh God.
But I mean, this is that like, oh my gosh, within some of the fantasy novels, what were we saying, like the kind of territorial alpha male thing that some people are into. But like that word, like I'm like, no, like I can't even like disregard that you're a different species. Like, yeah, it's just ooh. Yeah. But I love that she's like, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah, no, I love that. So his purr is ricocheting through her, awakening everything and lulling into complicity. But then I reconsidered his words, his "don't ever disobey me again." I reconsidered his words and straightened. He grinned at me in that wild way, and my hand connected with his face. Yes, Feyre. Definitely points for Feyre on that one. He needed a good slap for that one. I'm so glad.
He did, and I'm glad that she did. And again, we can give some. He was, what was it? He's filled with great and terrible magic and whatever, but whatever.
Yeah, and he still needed a good slap.
He still needed a good slap, and I'm glad that she did, and she needed to do that because that's just really annoying things to say. Don't tell me what to do, and don't bite me like some enraged beast. Oh my goodness, what a chapter. And if you like sexual tension, you probably loved that chapter, and if not, you were maybe a little uncomfortable. I like it, so I was a-okay with it. But yeah, so in chapter 21.
There we go. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode, guys. And if you haven't already, be sure to go over to ACOTAR, ACOTAA.circle.sh where you can dive deeper into this, meet the rest of the community, make yourself one of the people shaping how this goes down, because your voice is very needed and we are wanting to know what to do, how to do it. What do you love to tell us at acotar.circle.so? We'll see you there.
Bye.
Bye.